So I've been making websites for around 20 years, and I've been doing link building for around 13 years. And really, link building is what really started things for me. So I'm really excited to talk to you about it. First, I'm going to give you a little intro, a little bit about my story, my journey, a little bit about what backlinks are for those who might not know too much about it. Then I'm going to tell you a little about the past of link building. The link building that I started 13 years ago, does it still work today? Did it change? And if it did change, how did it change? We're going to talk about the present. What are 10 link building strategies that work right now today? That for those of you in SEO that could implement them, I think you'll find at least some of them to be relevant to you. And then we'll talk about the future of link building. What does it look like in 13 years in the future? Okay, so we're starting here my journey. So I started, that's me right there in 2003. And for me, building websites was kind of like working with Legos. I really loved the idea of building something, putting it out there, and then looking at the analytics and seeing people come to it. It's almost like right now with social media, right? You put something out there, maybe you have some filters, and you see how many likes do I have, how much exposure is there. And for me, that was the same thing with websites. I'd build it, and I'd see how many people actually comment. What if I change it? Are people staying longer or not? So I was really, really passionate about that at such a young age. But at that time, there was no such thing as a digital marketing degree or web design degree. So I went to a school of hotel management. And that's me right there, one of the first and last times I've ever cooked. And there I realized that I don't want to do this, right? I met so many people so passionate about hospitality. And every time I met those people, for me, it worked the opposite. I'm like, man, this guy's so into it that, yeah, I guess I could force myself to do this, but it's not me. So all of a sudden I was thinking, hey, if I want to do something else, let me see what I'm passionate about. And it made me think back to the times that I created websites. And back then I wasn't thinking this as a career. It didn't even, cross my mind. For me, it was just a hobby. It was like playing with Legos, right? But then I said, hey, if I want this to actually be my career, it's time to actually prove myself and say, hey, can I do this? So all of a sudden I could do that and not actually have to go in the hospitality industry, which I really didn't want to do. So it was the summer of my freshman year in college that I took on 2 internships. And one was about SEO, and specifically I was on a team that built links. And then the way we built links is we cold call. And we would do 100 calls a day, and we would try to build a couple of links per week. And it was for a company that owned a few websites like Costco.com, Laws.com, and I was part of the link building team. And then at the nighttime, I worked with someone who was freelancing, and I was helping him with PPC campaigns. He had some big clients too, like Disney and Budweiser, and I was helping him set up some PPC campaigns. I got really comfortable with Google Sheets and AdWords Editor also really early on. So when it came time where my summer was almost over and I had to go back to college, I said, hey, what if I take the few things that I learned and actually apply myself and maybe start a small business? And again, I'm thinking, I don't have much time. I really got to figure something out to justify going into this industry versus actually staying in hotel management. So I built a website. I already knew how to do that, and it was called BacklinkBuild. And I found a way to get links fast, much faster than actually having to cold call. I realized that if I did some data mining, I could find websites that are really high authority. Back then it was Google PageRank. Right now it's like Domain Authority or MozRank, but before Google would actually publicize it, they said, hey, this is your PageRank, and it'll update it a few times per year. So I learned how to get really high PageRank websites that would link back through things like blog comments and forum messages and even signing a guest book. And you could get these links much easier than making 100 phone calls per day. So I had an offering. I said, hey, I'm going to get you 45 of these high PageRank backlinks, and it's going to cost you $300, $295. And then knowing what I learned from Google Ads, I started bringing traffic to that. And it worked. It worked like magic. I would spend $50 to $100 to get one sale. Then I would spend the next 5 or 6 hours actually building these links for the customers. And after not having enough time in the day, it forced myself to find a team. And that's really what started things for me. And a lot of the people that started working for me 13 years ago still work for me today, except now they're not building links. Now they have a team of 50, 100 people under me, and that's still one of our core offerings. So when it came time to graduate, it was actually the day after graduation. I literally walked, and the next day I opened up the office. I did it with my brother, and that's much to my parents' dismay. You know, my brother had a really cushy job. He's 6 years older than me. He was working for Publicis in New York City, a nice 6-figure job. And I said, hey, Alex, here are my numbers. I graduated a year early. I said, here are my numbers. Why don't you start this company with me? And he did. So he quit his job and we started the company together. And we called it SmartSites. So we later said, hey, it's not just about link building. We're going to offer SEO and pay-per-click. We're going to help people build websites. And that was now around, say, 11 years ago. Okay, so what are backlinks? So when you talk about link building, or when you talk about links, there's usually 2 types of links. We're not talking about internal links, which is also very important. How do you link from your website to your own website? Right? How do you find the pages on your website that you want to rank high in Google, and how do you make sure that, especially if you have hundreds of pages on your website, it's all interlinked properly? That is not what I'm talking about today. I'm not talking about internal links. We're talking about backlinks or link building. These are third-party websites linking to you. It's basically like Google is a popularity contest. The more links you have, the more votes you have, the higher you are on the search engine rankings. Okay, so why is being on top of Google important? Right, and here's some statistics I'll read out loud. 93% of online experiences begin with a search engine. There are more than 3.7 billion Google searches conducted every day. 76% of all Google searches take place on Google. 16 to 20% of all annual Google search results are new. Google has discovered over 130 billion pages, trillion pages. So how do you make sure you're number one if there's 130 trillion pages that they know about? And the top 5 search results on Google account for 70% of all clicks. So yeah, if you want people to find you, 9 times out of 10, probably more than that, you want to be on Google. That's where everyone's going. Okay, now, why is it important to be not only on Google, but on top of Google? And this right here is a graph of the click-through rate based on the position you are on Google. And it's an exponential curve. The person on top, number 1, receives by far the majority of all clicks. Then it goes down from there. The top 3 also very good. If you're not on the first page, you're not being found. So not only do you want to be on Google, right? You want to be on top of Google. And how important is link building for that? Right? There's so many factors for it. How important is link building for it? And the answer is no one knows. Everyone gives you a different answer. So here's some graphs I was able to pull from quick Google searches. These guys, SC Roundtable, say 17%. These other guys say 15%. Someone says 31%. Someone else says 13%, right? No one knows, and you always kind of get these answers that are all over the place. How important are links? And to be honest, I don't think it's, making a pie chart of all things that are important for Google isn't even the right way to even represent this. Okay. But what I'm going to show you is the importance of backlinks are underestimated. I think all those graphs have it wrong, because at the end of the day, if you have everything else correct and you don't have a single link to your website, Google's not even going to find you. You're going to be nowhere, let alone on the top results, let alone for some competitive keywords that maybe you guys are after. And I think backlinks are underestimated because the rest of the stuff is easy. It's all relative, but right? To have your site mobile friendly, site speed, site security, the on-page stuff like metas, headings, URLs, internal links. If you build a website in WordPress, right, and you just do all the plugins or best practices, and it's pretty basic, right? Literally tens of thousands of people know how to do this, or hundreds of thousands probably. You already have most of those checkpoints, right? Your site's already secure. If you have the best, latest and greatest plugins, your site's already fast. If you're using WordPress, don't have too many third-party scripts, not going crazy on images, not doing anything too custom, that's going to be a fast site, right? So all of a sudden, hey, what else is left? If everyone else has all of these things already checked off, right, what's left? Okay. And another thing, just to prove how important are links, right? If you actually look at the people who are number 1, number 2, number 3, they have more links than everyone else. Right, and you can do that with your most competitive keywords as well. Put that in, take your most competitive keywords, put it through something like Ahrefs or Moz or SEMrush, your favorite SEO tool, and you'll notice, the biggest difference is usually the number of links. The guys on top have more links than the guys on the bottom. Not just quantity, it's also quality, but you'll see that really quickly. That link building is there. And again, that's why I don't like the 15%, 16%, 17%. I'm like, what does that even mean? The bottom line is if you want to rank on top for these keywords, the guys, no one's there with 0 links, right? Okay, let's talk about link building in the past. Well, one thing, with link building, what scares off a lot of people is, hey, it changes so fast. What works now doesn't work later. What works today is not going to work tomorrow, right? And it almost like makes them hesitant to even start link building, right? So I'm going to look at, hey, 13 years ago, here is the link building that worked, and what is it today? And you will see some trends. So 13 years ago, a lot of the link building was fully automated, right? And those things like blog comments and forums, right? And a lot of people did that, and there's so many of these like fully automated tools, and a lot of them are called black hat, right? That was a term that later came out. It's called a search engine nuke. I'm like, all right, if they're gonna use a software that has the word nuke in it, it's probably not a good strategy for the long term, right? Okay, today, spamming gets penalized, right? And Google was really quickly, thankfully, right, Google was able to tweak their algorithm and say, oh my God, all these guys are the number one, they're all nuking each other, and that's how they're getting there, right? Let's change to make sure that's not what's winning, right? So now it gets penalized, and automation assisted is what's working, right? So you can use something like Ahrefs and SEMrush to get you a nice list of what links to explore, right? You can use mass emailing and some mass outreach. So you can use automation to assist you in it. But anything that's fully automated is usually something that Google, the more you scale, the more people do this stuff, that's directly proportional to how fast Google is going to respond and say, hey, that's not okay. Okay. 13 years ago, there's thousands of links from social networking sites. There's a lot of these copycat sites. Before social media and social networks really consolidated, there's hundreds of thousands of them. They came out for every single niche. Instead of having a Facebook group for this, they had their own social networking site. And one strategy for link building was to get listed in every single one of those, right? That does not exist today, but social signals right now is, helps with link building. Sometimes not too directly, but that was the before or now social signals, so that changed. 13 years ago, very similar, director submission you could submit to, and there's offerings out there, and I know because I had one of these offerings that I would submit your site to hundreds of directories, right? And then there's so many out there, I would do 100, someone else do 500, someone else do 1,000. How is there 1,000 directories all of a sudden? I'm creating these directory websites, right? That doesn't work anymore. Now, it's still good, directories are still good, very valid, especially if you're local and not too competitive. Directories by itself is going to get you pretty far, again, if you're a local doctor or home services. But now it is less directories and it's quality directories. If you see something like Yext is actually probably the best out there, but there's a bunch that are a little bit cheaper than Yext. And actually, Manual is probably better than Yext. You go Manual than Yext, and then a lot of these other guys are a little bit lower in the funnel. But that gets you, again, very similar to the offerings of before, but instead of thousands, there's now dozens. I mean, that's really the difference. They're higher quality, right? They're not just sites made for Google, right? They're actually like, Foursquare or Uber. You could get your site listed there. That's very valuable. Okay, before article submission, you could submit your article to lots of article submission places. Again, these sites were made for Google, right? Just submit your article and then they maybe do some QA on it, maybe not, and they list you there, that's it. Now, today, blog networks don't work, article farms don't work. Farms, to say farms, anyway. But guest blogging works. I think kind of very similar in the sense that you write an article piece, right? You write a blog post, an article, whatever it is, and then you find somewhere to distribute it, right? And the higher authority, the better place you have to distribute it, and it links back to you, the more value it gets. So very similar to 13 years ago, but instead of looking for these, article websites that are just made for Google, instead you're actually looking for legit websites, not just made for Google, actually have an audience, actually have a topic, actually have some credibility, but the same thing, you're writing an article and you're getting it submitted and links back to your website. Not that much different 13 years ago. Okay, so takeaways from 13 years ago versus today, links are still links, right? There's been so many little spikes of people searching, link building is dead, right? And then all of a sudden it's alive again, I guess, right? Links are still links. It will be sites built for Google don't survive, right? That's something that was different 13 years ago. There's so many websites that it's literally there for Google. There's hundreds of websites that literally look exactly the same, besides the color and the logo. They're literally there for Google. That does not work anymore. 100% automation is just a short-term strategy. It might work for a little bit of time, then it's going to stop working, so better not to do it. Look for stuff that, if you could, right, some of those things. If it's cheap, if it's easy, if it's fast, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. It kind of works here as well. And relevancy is important. Before there's a lot of these general directories, general article sites. But now that's not good. There's no one website that's good, to link you, no matter what business you're in. It has to be niche specific more and more. Okay, the present. So now I'm going to share you 10 very specific link building strategies that work today. So if you build links in your company, at least one of these should be applicable to you. Okay, one is competitor links, and this one is probably my favorite because this one, it works for any type of website, right? And it'll always continue working just because of the nature for it. And what it is there's a few tools out there. This one's my favorite, the Ahrefs Link Intersect tool. And you put in a few websites and you put in your website, and it links to the websites that link to your competitors, not yours, right? And usually if it links to 3 of your competitors and not you, more often than not, you could get listed on that website as well. Right, so you could go to Google, type in your most profitable keyword where you're trying to rank for, look at the guys ranking 1, 2, 3, right? Put your site in, put those 3 guys in, or 4 guys, or 5 guys, or 2 guys, and it will give you a list of things that they have and they don't. And again, if you're going to Google first and you're choosing the guys to rank the highest, this will always work. And this is something that's we've been using for over a decade, and it's always worked. The actual links that we get from it are different, but the method is the same. If I look at my competitors, and all of a sudden, you look at your 5 competitors and you're taking the best links that they have, you're going to rank above them because not one of them has, all of them, right? You're going to find some links that only website 1 has, only website 2 has, only website 3 has. You're going to find where 2 and 3 intersect, where 1 and 4 intersect, 1, 4, and 5 intersect. And if that's all you do, actually a lot of times that's enough. Okay, next, buy domains. Now we're getting a little bit more lucrative in this. And I did this, recently actually with a local business, as a podiatrist, and we go on Yelp. It's as easy as this. We go on Yelp. We did it manually, but if you get fancy and do some data mining here, if you're doing national, the strategy, you should probably do some data mining, not do this manually. But we did this manually for this person. We went on Yelp and we looked at podiatrists in the area in New Jersey. And by like page 2 and 3, these websites were down, as in like these podiatrists just started working, they're retired. Some people might still be looking for them, but they don't exist anymore. They sold their practice, they retired. We did this actually like after COVID, and I think a lot of those guys just literally retired at that time. So we clicked around just the websites and domains, and we found just in the local area of New Jersey podiatrists, we found something like 30 some odd websites that don't exist anymore. These guys just didn't renew their domain. So we bought all of them and we just redirected to his website. Right? It could be lucrative for SEO, right? But it's also just lucrative for referral traffic. We got so many people, like they said, oh yeah, I was actually looking for Dr. So-and-so, but it looks like they're out of business. They're redirecting me to your website. So, do you have a practice nearby? Right? And all of a sudden we got patients directly from this strategy, separate from, and we tracked it all. The way we did the redirect, we made sure that there's a UCAN campaign passed. So we're actually able to track it. We said, hey, there's something like a dozen patients over a few months when we checked that we actually got directly from this strategy without any SEO link building advantages as well. Okay, next is link baiting. This is a good popular one where you create something that other people want to reference. All right. In this case, it's a website we did for that sells gold and silver bullion. And we realized that a lot of websites in this space reference this really, really ugly graph from Kitco. So a lot of websites in this gold and silver and bullion place want on their website to have the current market prices. And the only guys that kind of gave it away as like a widget that you could add to your own website, had a really, really ugly one. So we designed a much better looking one. And then we contacted everyone that had the Kitco market graph and we said, hey, we went to your website. You reference this Kitco market graph that's really ugly. Why don't you switch over to ours? Ours looks much better, it's more customized, you can add your colors to it, it resizes better, it actually looks decent and mobile and doesn't break, and our prices are even more up to date, right? And we got hundreds of links from that. So, this takes a little bit of strategy, it takes development, right? It takes multiple teams. But when you are going for those like top competing keywords like buy gold, right? So many big money players are trying to get that. You have to do something like this. Okay. One is partnerships, and this is a really good one. I love partnerships, and we actually made a whole partnerships team, at our agency because of this. Because a lot of times we've seen that we have win-win relationships, right? A lot of times, as the agency making websites, help them promote them. We're working with third parties to help them get reviews or have a live chat on their website or uptime monitoring. We literally work with dozens of these SaaS companies, and we said, wait a second, we're not competing, and we share an audience. So it's so easy to reach out to them and say, hey, let's do something together, right? Let's trade guest blog posts. Let's do a webinar together, right? And there's a lot of these websites out there. This one's partner-based. It's a really good one, where you could put in a company, put in SmartSites, and you see a lot of the partnerships we have. So you could do that, put in your top competitors, and see the partnerships that they have, and reach out to those same folks. Again, these aren't competing with you. This is someone that shares an audience, and it's kind of like we're doing this for SEO link building, and SEO purposes, kind of, but it actually has far outreaching benefits as well. A lot of times, we schedule this webinar and we actually close a deal from the other person's customers, and we actually sell some of their product as well. So SEO link building is a benefit, sure, but you could also get some direct sales, exposure, branding, things like that as well. Cool. Next one, get on top list. So even if you must pay, so this is a big thing that Google cracked down on paid links, right? And all of a sudden, the industry changed a lot. It used to be that you could just buy links, and people would come in and say, hey, here's my inventory, and this is this much authority, this much page rank, and it costs $500 per month to be listed here, to be listed there. That went away, and then buying links for SEO purposes, really theoretically shouldn't have any benefit. But what we've noticed is this really cool indirect benefit. So for example, we paid for this listing on the side, top SEO companies in the United States. That's a paid listing, right? That theoretically shouldn't give you any Google SEO benefits, but that could be debated as well. But what's really cool is, even writers in Forbes, they reference this to rank, their list. And their list is not a paid list. So because I was in Clutch, I am now on Forbes with an actual direct link with SEO benefits. And I know it came from there because if I look at the top 5, they're all exactly the same. So I know that the Forbes guy looked at this to write his article. And maybe he changed place number 3 or 4 and added some more ideas to it. But so many times we see this indirect benefit of we're listed in these top lists that actually give you organic benefit, but because of the paid list, we paid in the first place. And by the way, Clutch is based in Washington, D.C. I think there's a couple of guys here from Clutch. So if you are, I talked to a bunch of you, if you guys are from an agency or B2B, it's not just agencies, definitely, try to find them during reception. This is a really good list to be on. Cool, create your own listicle. So we created one, and this one actually came from a partnership where we're working a partnership, and I said, hey, instead of trading guest posts, why don't I actually, make this top list, because we really like your product, and now we're actually using Smith AI for our own purposes. So we created 30 best virtual receptionist services for small businesses. In exchange, we got guest posts, but not only them, a lot of the guys, number 2, 3, 4, 5, a lot of them actually reached out to us, and they said, hey, we noticed that you're ranking us, and we want to also be rank higher on this list. We'd love to tell you a little bit more product. And so many times we said, okay, yeah, tell us about your product, and if we deem that you actually belong on this list, and you actually maybe give us a guest post or something that will, make that relationship happen. We'll make that win-win. And a lot of people that aren't on this list, this article, end up ranking really well. So if you search something like top virtual receptionist for small businesses, it comes up. So a lot of companies not on this list reached out and said, hey, how can I be on this list? And we said, oh yeah, sure. We can make a top 31. No problem. And here's what we'd like in return. Give us a guest post. Write a similar listicle where you list us. Do you do webinars? Do you do this? Do you do that? And we create that relationship, and we have that win-win. All right, number 7, help a reporter out. Yeah, this is really cool. It's free. If you guys are in this space, I recommend you sign up for it. If you pay, you get a little bit more. Just more organized, you can put in keywords and stuff, but there's also a free version. And this is something that reporters use. There's 2 sides of it. If you're a reporter and you want to write about something, and you're looking for sources, you come here and you say, hey, I work for Forbes, the health column or whatever, and I'm actually writing about, how COVID impacted dentists, how dental offices had to, alter to actually handle the, health things that COVID brought about. So I'm looking for dentists to speak about that, right? And the other side, you sign in and you say, hey, I'm a dentist. right? It links you guys up and says, okay, perfect. Here's a guy looking for dentists that works at this publication. There's some really big publications out there. A lot of really high quality links we got was from this, right? So you go there and you say, hey, I am this professional, and it links you up in it, everything, you know. Writing about real estate, writing about, I mean, literally any niche you could think of, this works for. And again, for our own product, for building for clients, we use this, and across the board, it's worked. A lot of times you write something, it's not always used, so, you know, I wouldn't treat it as I just spent 20 minutes writing something, wasn't even a reference. You actually probably have to like submit like 10 of these to get one picked up, but when it picks up, and sometimes it's a really big publication, you know, it's way worth it. And they publicize it, by the way, so they're like, hey, this is a publication, this is the article I'm writing, and then if you're interested in submitting, you submit. Again, it's free. If you want it a little bit more curated, you want only some articles to come to you, only some ideas, you want to kind of protect your inbox, that's where you have to pay a little bit of monthly fee. Okay, guest post, yeah, this one works, and I don't see it going away. It's not the most lucrative, but you know, it's still a really good idea. And a lot of times, it's like, where do you even start with guest posts? A lot of times, you have the relationships already, right? It's like all the clients you work with, you know, how about them? Your vendors, your partnerships, you know, the conference you just went to, do they allow guest blogging, right? And that doesn't work. You can always go on Google and search, you know, niche, you know, say, you know, medical guest post guidelines, right? Home services guest post guidelines, and you'll find, you know, these like apartment blog, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll take guest posts, and here's the guidelines, and as long as you write to the guidelines, they'll allow it. It takes a long time, you know, that's another one of these things. A lot of these blogs exist, and they're like, guest post is not the first thing that they love to do, so they're like, all right, I guess, you know, we'll schedule you for next quarter, and they're like, all right, I guess I gotta wait 3 months for this link, but it works, you know, it's not too lucrative. The one thing, you know, lesson from the past, watch out for these built for Google sites, right? If you go to it and their top things, like guest post guidelines, and pays $50 to submit, and you're like, you're literally there trying to sell guest posts, you know. But if it's not built for Google, if it's actual website, an actual audience, it's a good opportunity to, again, it's a link benefit, but there's also referral traffic, there's also exposure, and potentially if you find something good and you're actually getting this referral traffic, actually getting some interest in your product, then you can make a routine schedule with them. Say, hey, okay, can I do this every quarter? Can I do this every month? How often will you allow these guest posts to be published? Cool. Another was track mentions. Right, so you go in, and there's a lot of these free tools like Google Words or BuzzSumo, you got paid before, but you go out and you put in your brand, and they'll show you the people who are talking about your brand, right? And I told you already, a lot of these times we're on these top lists, right? Because we pay for these directories, all of a sudden, you know, they're mimicking these directories, but, you know, maybe they don't put us number one, right? So they say, hey, you know, top Magento company, development companies, and we're there, we're number 3, right? And we see this because of Google Words, right? They don't tell us, they don't even, you know, say, good news, like, we listed you. It's like, you could have done that, we would have, sometimes we would have paid for it, to be honest, but anyway, so you put in Google Words, right, you get notified, and a lot of times you can reach out and say, hey, how can I actually, you know, increase our relationship here? Or, you know, you mentioned SmartSites, but you didn't link to our website, can you just add a link to our website? Or, hey, next time you're creating a similar post or listicle or another feature, can we be on it? Can you consider us for it? Can you place us higher? What will it take to be placed higher? Can we maybe write a guest post or, you know, somewhere other? But yeah, you could do that, and you know, if you want to do more, you can even put your competitors out there. You know, so anytime anyone mentions your competitor, you get a notification. All the times they're, you know, my competitor just did this collaboration with this company. You know, I think we could do it too. So you could put in not just your branding, you could put in your competitors. You can even put in topics. You know, especially if you're like a very specified niche, like, hey, I want someone who's specifically talking about this, I want to get notified, right? You could do that as well. Okay, next is interviews on podcasts. And for example, my brother, co-founder, we started the company together, he does a lot of interviews, right? So for you to get all the same links, right, from the interviews that he got, you could simply go on Google and you type in his name, Alex Melen, plus interview, right? And all of a sudden you'll see all the interviews, or maybe not all, but at least all the ones that matter, you know, the ones that Google indexed, right? And you can reach out to these same places and say, hey, can you interview us? Right, and there's actually there's a lot out there. You know, interview content is really good content. Blogs, etc. Love these features. Right, there's publications that it's like CEO interviews or CMO interviews, or they're niche specific. Right, so a lot of times you could go to your number one competitor, or if there's someone like an influencer in your space or someone big in your space that does a lot of these. Again, you could put it into Google. Right, it's all public. Right, and you reach out, and a lot of times like, you don't really get charged for interviews, right? It's not like a money exchanging thing. It's, they want to interview you, so they can put on their website, and their audience can learn about you, and in exchange, you get that link, and all it does is cost time. There's interviews and there's podcasts, similar. If you're just on podcasts, it's not, technically a link, but this is good for exposure, not just for SEO and building. Okay, cool. So those are 10 tactics that work today. Let's talk a little bit about the future, right? How is this landscape changing? And a big way it's changing is with ChatGPT, right? Is with AI. A lot of people are going to be using Google differently, right? And there's now even, I don't think there's an industry agreed acronym for it yet. But there's also going to be in the future optimization for ChatGPT, right? If I go to ChatGPT and I say, hey, tell me the top SEO companies, right? Where does ChatGPT get this information from, right? So this ChatGPT AI optimization is going to be a thing, the same way that people are trying to hey, how do I optimize for Google? And when someone asks about, dentists in the area, right, in Google, I want to show up on top of Google. When someone asks for dentists in my area in ChatGPT, how do I make sure I show for that? So it's going to be the same optimization game or similar. Okay, using ChatGPT for link building, what's possible, what's not possible, at least not yet. Okay, one we'll start with is content. Okay, so ChatGPT is pretty good with content. I gave a presentation last week that dove a little bit more into this, there's a lot into this, but for this presentation, I'm just simplifying it. You could use ChatGPT to help you write content. Right. You should learn a lot of tricks to it if you're just taking the first thing that it wrote for you, not the best way, and later could actually get you penalized because a lot of people are giving you the same prompt and everyone's going to have the same article, right? But it can also help you, especially when you're working with third parties and it's like guest blogging, right? All of a sudden you're like, hey, it's not even my blog. You can use ChatGPT to help you either write those articles or improve those articles. So content, again, I wouldn't use it, to just write an article for you, but it could definitely enhance it. Okay, communication. Yeah, this one's okay too. Still not my favorite, right? You say, hey, help me write an email that helps me get this link. To be honest, right now, a templated email for this stuff I think is better than ChatGPT. ChatGPT gives you a different email for every single context, but I kind of look at it and say, really, my guy number one and guy number two and guy number three, they don't know that they're all going to say email or they're getting different emails, right? So a good email template, what I've seen, actually does work better than using ChatGPT to give you personalized emails, but I'm sure there's use cases that could be proven otherwise. Development is actually one of my favorite, right? You could go to ChatGPT. ChatGPT itself can't access the internet right now, right? If you get a plugin, it could access the internet as one page of content, but it didn't actually take you all to its algorithm. But you could go to ChatGPT and ask it, write me a Google Apps script that scripts this website, right, and gives me all the websites on top for this on Yelp, and then afterwards, write me a script that checks if all these domains even exist, right? All of a sudden, by using ChatGPT for development, without even knowing a piece of code yourself, you could have to do pretty complex things. Anyway, yeah. There's some examples I won't get too into, but my favorite use case for ChatGPT is actually development. I think it's more powerful for developers than it is for writing or for branding or for helping you write emails or anything like that. I think really the power of ChatGPT is with development. Okay, what's even less possible? What's not possible yet? It's not so good with link opportunities, right? A lot of times I think SEO software is much better. So you could now go there and say, hey, I'm in business in Washington, D.C. Are there any directories based in Washington, D.C. that I could list my website on? It'll give you an okay answer, be a little bit of an outdated answer, but it will list some stuff right now. Bard also, if you use Bard, it'll do a little bit better job, but it's not going to do as good of a job as Ahrefs and SEMrush and a lot of these SEO software does. Not so good with complex problems, right? If you go to and say, hey, here's my website, tell me what to do to make it go fast, it's going to say, oh, there's a lot of things you should check, right? It's not actually going to dive in. Even with things like, hey, here's this piece of code, right? Make it go faster. It can't even give you the answer because it's slow because it's accessing a database and the database has 100,000 rows. And right now ChatGPT doesn't know how many rows your database has. So how would it know that the slow then is actually the size of the database and you got to make a virtual database? It just doesn't know, right? So it's good with simple things or specific things, or when starting from nothing, or just like, hey, this code is just throwing a bug. Find a bug, or find it. But when you come to with a complex problem, it can't help you too much yet. And yeah, it doesn't really replace SEO software. It's good for like this, like, you know, I don't know, Swiss Army knife, right? It could like do so many things, but doesn't like do it amazing, right? That's what it's good for in terms of SEO. But when you're looking at specific use cases, hey, I want to research, you know, these websites, I want to research my competitors, SEO software does a much better job, at least right now, than that. And Ahrefs is my favorite SEO software, probably SEMrush is number 2, and then Moz maybe fell down a little bit, but pretty much, you know, you could go to these websites like G2, you know, they have user ratings, you can look at their websites and see, you know, what the users have said, and if you're looking at SEO and you're serious about it, you have to have the software, usually more than one. You usually find, hey, this software is good for A, B, and C, but when we're talking about D, this other software is good, so it's not going to pick one, sometimes you got to do a few, but ChatGPT itself is not powerful enough. Okay. As generative AI becomes more prevalent, backlinks will become more important. I think the importance of link building is only trending upwards and not downwards, right? It's kind of the point I made earlier. You know, now making your site good on mobile is much easier. Making your site secure is easier. Everyone's using WordPress, right? All of these things are already like check, 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 check. And now a lot of people are using ChatGPT to help them with content. So all of a sudden, writing content is easier, right? Everyone's going to have the same piece of content or similar. It's going to be just as good, right? Hey, everyone's talking about, I don't know, Invisalign, right? All these dentists, hundreds of these dentists are talking about Invisalign, you know, or thousands rather, and 100 of them use ChatGPT either partially or a lot or a little bit, right, to help them write that content. You know, who says what content ranks higher? Right? If all the content is similar, the website is similar, you know, what's the other factor that's missing, right? It's link building. So I think link building will only trend higher with ChatGPT and generative AI. And again, when it comes to actually showing up on ChatGPT, right, again, hey, when someone goes to ChatGPT and asks for top SEO companies in the United States or top dentists, right, you know, not only do I want to be on top of for Google for it, right, I want to be on top of ChatGPT for it. And a lot of times, what does it do? It kind of mimics what other people say, right? So again, if I Google top SEO companies in the United States and number 1 is Clutch, right, and you go to Clutch and you see their top rankings for that keyword, right, and then you ask ChatGPT the same thing, usually you'll see that ChatGPT's rankings, you know, mimic Clutch's, right, if Clutch was number 1 for this keyword. So all of a sudden you're like, hey, being on this list not only helps me be on this list, but it actually has this indirect benefit that I now, you know, really can't be tracked, right? ChatGPT doesn't link, you know, it'll still show up as Google as a source, right? But you're on top of ChatGPT for it because you're on these top lists. And you know, you see ChatGPT work similar to Google, but it doesn't follow some of these like Google-only things like relation no follow, or is it sponsor link or non-sponsor link. At least for now, ChatGPT actually doesn't know, so it doesn't care, right? So as long as you're on top there, and everyone says you're on top, no matter how they link you or how they reference you, you're going to see that ChatGPT is going to mimic that. And that's all, guys. Thank you for listening. If you want to, schedule a meeting with my team, please do. The QR code is there, or I'll find myself or my colleague Tehran during reception. Or connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the QR code there. Do we have time for questions?
We have time for questions.
Cool. Please, question right there. Can we have the magic box?
What's your stance on the concept of like link toxicity and the idea that like a link can harm you more than it will help you if it's the wrong link, it's a bad link? And I don't mean in the context of like manual action penalties, but like literally algorithmic. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was more of a topic before, because when you use that automation, you kind of see, hey, you know, all of a sudden, you know, you're ranking higher, and now, you know, just you did too much automation, too much toxicity, and you drop down. Google's got a lot smarter with it, and I know that also because some competitors did this concept of negative SEO. So all of a sudden, you know, my site got like 1 million like extra backlinks one day, and it's all from like pornographic websites. So wait a second, you know, all these like anchors that I don't even like say it, you know, out loud here. And Google was smart enough to actually not delist me. So yeah, Google is kind of smarter to make sure you don't get penalized, and I think for no other reason than, you know, if it didn't do that, if it didn't just discredit links that actually, you know, extra penalize you, then everyone could be doing negative SEO on their competitors, right? Because all of a sudden, we'd be like, hey, if I just do this blast, if I nuke, you know, right, to my competitor's site and give it 1 million links, it's actually going to go up until it's going to drop down, and then I think Google got smart and stopped it allowing that. And yeah, it might, give us a little bit. It won't value those like toxic links, but it's not necessarily going to penalize you all the way. Good question, thank you. Any more questions? Please.
So I get published in the media a lot, and I've noticed that these follow links are starting to become less and less and less. Are you seeing a trend? Because I'm getting about 60% follow links and like 40% are no follow. So you spend all this time and energy creating this content, and then at the end you end up getting a no follow link.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great question, right? And it's like Google came out with this concept, right? And then just more and more people are picking it up that say, hey, if this is a link that's like purchased, you do no follow, right? And otherwise you do follow the link. It's just like a little technicality. And yes, a lot of, especially these major publications said, hey, I'm just gonna no follow them, right? And especially if there was like some money exchange or something, they say, hey, we don't want to be hurt by it. We're not, anyway, so they put this no follow. Yes, it is a bigger trend, but I've noticed that, and it's debated. If you had a panel of SEO guys, it would be a debate that no follow links are still worth something. Not on the side of I've seen no follow links are still past value, right? Even though Google said, hey, do follow pass and no follow doesn't, we've seen, just through our own, dealings that no follow value still gets passed. But it is a good topic to debate. Yeah. Great question, great point. Anyone else? All right, that's it. Thank you, guys.